Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. Let's go ahead. Let's get this started. We can get you in, get you out. Try to stay on schedule today. I want to welcome you to our second annual financial seminar. We've been holding the tax seminar in the past, but we've changed it more to a financial seminar. We want to cover more of the financial topics also, along with the IRS guidelines and the tax guidelines that are going to be presented a little bit later. For introductions, my name is Blake Legler. I'm the Director of Internal Audit for Cypress-Fairbanks ISD. In the back, we have Leslie Francis. She's our Assistant Superintendent for Communication and Community Relations. Many of y'all knew her when she previously held the Director of Communications and was kind of doing Bevan's job. Bevan Gordon is our Director of Marketing and Business Relations, if you don't know her already. She oversees the PTOs. Christy Giron, I don't believe is here. She may come later, I'm not sure, but she's our Director of General Administration, and she's over the booster clubs. And then over here in the blue, we have Janet Tapia Gonzalez. She works in my department. She's a senior internal auditor, and she usually handles a lot of the PTO and booster club questions when y'all call in and ask any questions to us. Some administrative items. Cell phones, please turn off or put them on silent mode if you can. Restrooms are located in the main building to the right. We have 2 scheduled breaks in between speakers. They're going to be 15 minutes, so that's good because you have a little walk to get to the restrooms from where we're at. So for the agenda, I'll start with the internal audit presentation, go over some of the financial controls and things that you should be doing in your groups. Then we'll have a 15-minute break, and then we will have Merle Shefstead will cover the IRS information, the Form 990s, the 990EZs, and schedule. And then we'll have another 15-minute break, transition with a speaker, and then we'll go and we'll have the comptroller's office here to discuss the sales tax topics. And just like last year, we're recording. We're doing an audio recording. The recording is going to be focused this year on the slide presentations, so it should be a better recording this year. But as always, the comptroller's office does not allow to be recorded, his piece. So there will be no recording of that, but I do have some tax information that I can cover, in my presentation, and you'll probably hear a repeat of it when he covers his presentation. So with the recording, I do ask that if you have any questions, we can answer them as we go through the presentations. But please raise your hand, and we can get you a mic because we want the question to be heard on the recording. Because anybody who's listening to the recording later, if you don't have the mic, then nobody's going to hear the question. And so we just want to ensure that the questions can be heard. So we'll have a couple of people walking around with mics. Just raise your hand, we'll get you a mic, and then you can ask your question. We always like to start off and try and find out who's with who. So if you're with a PTO today, please raise your hands. Okay, about half. Well, booster clubs, I'm assuming, other half? Yeah. Y'all are in the center. Raise your hand if you're a treasurer. Okay, God bless y'all. Y'all have one of the most difficult jobs in the parent orgs. I know it's a lot of, responsibility. Presidents. All right. Anybody else outside of that? Internal auditors. Okay. If we can get a mic stand, or we can use this one if we needed to. You can do that, or raise your hand, just whatever, just as long as we can get the questions heard. That's fine. So for handouts, you should have the Internal Audit Financial Seminar presentation. That's the one with the pink cover. In that we have guidance over preparing your Form 990EZ and related topics. And there should be some sales tax guidance in there. It's a publication from the comptroller's office. So even though they don't give out their presentation or let us record it or anything like that, this is an official publication from the comptroller's office. So everything that he's going to be talking about is generally in there. It's just sometimes it's a little difficult to understand or interpret, but it's there. And then certificate for continuing education hours, CPE. If you're a CPA or something like that and you need CPE hours, talk to Janet afterwards and she can get you a certificate. Merle Shefstad with Reamer, McGinnis, and Associates will be here after me, and he's going to cover the IRS topics and what the requirements are. And then again, Michael Stegent with the Comptroller's Office. He's a Houston area enforcement officer, and he's going to be here to discuss all the sales tax topics. So with that, I'm going to start with my presentation. All right. So the PTO and Booster Club guidelines. Does everybody know where those are at right now currently? Has everybody looked at them or tried to look at them? I know it's a long document. It used to be way longer in the past. We have done a great job at trying to shorten it up, and we're continuing that. We're trying to make it easy to review and to look at. The best thing the recommendation I can give you is when you go in there to look up something, do the Control F, or the find, and search a topic. If you don't know exactly what to search or what term to search, then you can go and look through the contents and see if you can find the topic that way. But it's several sections, within those guidelines. We got the fundraiser guidelines. Section 3 is our piece, usually the financial guidelines. Before that, it's how you set up the organization. So it's all inclusive of everything you need to know for your organization. So most everything we're talking about today is covered somewhere in those guidelines. So that's like your book, your manual. Okay. On here we say the checklist. We want you to complete the checklist and the guidelines annually for an overview of your organization's status. Okay, this is in Section 3 currently. Right now, it's in Section 3.2 of the guidelines. So Section 3, page 2, and it's just a checklist of things that you need to go through and answer those questions so that you can get your overview of your organization's status. And one thing to mention is right now we're currently going through and revising the guidelines. There's a big, and pretty much all of the revisions have been made. But there should be some new updated revised guidelines coming out. And another thing to mention is we're trying to set up we're working on setting up a live binder. And it's just an electronic format, a place where you can go and get all of the information. You can find the guidelines and then also any kind of templates or any kind of fillable forms. Later on we'll talk about fundraiser activity report with the permission request and the operating report. We want to make that simpler to use and more user-friendly, so we're going to turn those into fillable forms for you guys, electronic formats. They're all going to be housed in one location, and so more information on that's going to come a little bit later, and we'll probably have some type of webinar or some type of video walking you through the process of how to use that. So that's coming. Here are the checklists. Hopefully that'll be in the live binder separated, from the guidelines in the future. But the checklist serves as a guide to help ensure that your parent organizations are complied with the district's board policies and guidelines, along with federal and state regulations governing PTO and booster clubs. All right, this is your general calendar of dates, okay? Basically, it's stating here at the top, every month the treasurer should be doing their, monthly bank statement reconciliations, and they should also be preparing their treasurer reports monthly and issuing those to all of their officers and presenting them at their meetings. And this is so that, you're being open and everybody can see what's happening and your members know what's going on. So that's the purpose of that. The next one on here, the fundraising activity report, the operating report, we're asking that those be completed within 1 week of the fundraiser's end. Okay? I know that's tough, it's a challenge, but you got to think, the longer it takes to fill that out or if someone waits, that information, you're going to forget a lot of the circumstances of that fundraiser. And so if you wait 2-3 weeks out, you're going to forget a lot of details that need to be reported on that operating report. So that's why we really push for a 1-week turnaround on those. Some of you have mentioned that, y'all might be doing 10, 15 fundraisers throughout the year, and you want to just do one report or something. Well, no, each one of those fundraisers have to have their own activity reports with their operating report and such. So just need to make sure that we try to get those in as quickly as possible to the treasurer, and then those are also going to the school principal or designee. So here, the PTO Booster Club checklist was next. That's something we already covered. Needs to be done before 9/15, so in the middle of this month. Also, the IRS 501c3 tax exempt status. Just go through and check your organization's IRS 501c3 tax exempt status and send the confirmation page to Bevan Gordon for PTOs, or Booster Club, send it to Christy Giron. And we have a slide example in the next slide. The PTOs, for their list of officers, you need to submit those to the principal and to Bevan Gordon before 9/15. Booster clubs need to complete the information sheet, and that should be in LiveBinder, and we'll get that out there for you to use, or I think Christy sends it out to all the booster clubs, but that needs to be completed and submitted to the principal and Christy Giron. The financial and review reports, 9/15 date, PTOs need to submit it to the principal and to Bevan Gordon, and booster clubs to Christy Giron and the principal and the sponsor.
Question over here.
Yes.
I was wanting to know if these dates are published anywhere, because we can barely see it on the slide. So
there should be.
Okay.
Okay,
thank you.
Yeah, it's small on the slide, but some of the ones like that, we do have it in the handout. Yeah, so it's a lot bigger for you. The permission request for...
Sorry, one more question. For the handouts, do you have an electronic version? So for our members who cannot come here?
Yeah, those will be provided electronically.
Okay.
On the website. Yeah, along with the video and everything. All of that will be provided.
All the handouts.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Thank you.
Except for the comptroller's office. They don't provide a handout. So. The fundraising activity reports, the permission request. It used to be that we recommended it needed it before September 30th of each year, or at least 30 days prior. Now we're giving more discretions to the principal to make those determinations, because they're supposed to control how many fundraisers are occurring out on their campus and what's hitting their community. And so the recommendation is still to try and get those in 30 days prior to your fundraiser start, get the permission from the principal. But if it's after that, it's up to the principal to decide if they want to allow the fundraiser to occur or not. The rest of this stuff is really just your IRS returns when they're due, and it all depends on when your fiscal year end occurs. Down at the bottom, sales tax, same thing. It's just when your sales tax quarterly reports are due. The IRS 1099 form is something that if a total of $600 or more is paid to an individual during a calendar year, the 1099 form must be issued, and that's by January 31st. So we mentioned the treasurer's report, so you should have a copy of this in your packet. It's very basic. I mean, really, it's like a checkbook. Think of a checkbook. You're really, for each month, you're starting out with your beginning cash balance at the beginning of the month. You're just noting what collections you've received, what disbursements, what expenses you've paid, and then you just end with your ending cash balance. Pretty simple. The current receivables, that's anything in the month that you expect to receive or that you know that you're probably going to receive. And then the current payables, that's just anything that's incurred where you've incurred a liability, but you haven't paid it yet. That would be your current payables. And so you would just list those there. Yes?
Are you expecting the receivables and payables for 1 month ahead or 1 month behind or for the full year?
The receivables would be just as you know that they're 1 month is fine. It's just whatever you think is going to occur, what you're going to be reasonably expect to receive. So that's like if you know that you have members that haven't paid yet, but they're members to continue their membership, then that's a receivable. You know you're supposed to collect it, but we're looking at receivables that are going to be coming within the next, probably within that year, because that's what a receivable is
Okay,
for the
so
current
for
year.
a band of 200 members, this is going to be a pretty big report then.
Yeah. It can be until they pay, right?
Yeah,
As
clearly.
they pay in, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
On the 1099 form for $600 or more, is that even if you're reimbursing? Like if someone purchased something for the use of the whole, so it's more like
It's not
if you're-
reimbursements. No, it's
Not
paying for
reimbursement.
services.
Okay.
It's like you're contracting out labor or something,
Okay.
or someone's providing a service for you.
Okay,
And
so if you're paying your
it's income, right?
copier fees with like to a company? That,
No, not to a company. No, this
Okay.
is someone, an individual.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions on that? No? Okay. Part of the treasurer's report is the cash forecast. And so basically, it starts out with your available funds, which includes the receivables that you're expecting to incur or receive and deem collectible, less your current payables. And so that gives you your available funds. And then you enter in any potential expenses. So these are things that you haven't incurred the liability yet, but you have it on the book, like y'all voted on it, and you might be paying for a trip later or something like that. You want to put those in here and plug them in, and then have the cash forecast so that you know where you stand on your cash balance. This is that status. When we say to go and print out your confirmation of your status, this is what it's going to look like. This is what we want you to send to Christy Giron and Bevan Gordon to show that you're in good standing with the IRS. I think you can also pull your 990 from this website as well. The website is located down here. We'll also cover it a little bit later, but it's at apps.irs.gov/app/EOS. And you just plug in your information into that website, and you can pull up your organization's information and current status. So money handling guidelines for your organizations. Just as a reminder, PTOs and booster clubs and volunteers may not handle district money, and district employees may not handle PTO and booster club money. There's supposed to be a separation between the two organizations. You guys are your own organizations. It protects you guys, it protects our employees. It's just a good control to have, that we're not intermingling money. We're not, we don't want to get into an argument of, well, the district employee was collecting money on our behalf and something happened to that money, or vice versa. So we want to avoid that at all costs. PTO and booster club money cannot be stored in a district safe, but you can if you would like to purchase a safe that would be located at your school or campus, you need to receive your principal and sponsor's approval. The principal and sponsor would also need to approve of the safe's location. And some schools may not have space available to allow a safe to be installed. The combination should be strictly kept with your organization. Don't give it to any of the sponsors or any district employee. It's your safe, so don't give out that combination to anyone else.
So when you say district employee, so if you have a parent that works at the school, or let's say it's a parent that's just a substitute teacher, would a substitute teacher be considered a district employee if they just maybe work?
Substitutes are considered district employees.
Okay.
And so
if they were, they could not hold like an office or anything like that, or?
typically, especially the two positions are treasurer and president.
Okay.
Right. But yeah, they should not be handling money.
Okay, thank you.
My question, sorry.
So to repeat, substitutes and employees may be a signer on the bank account, but they have to get special permission from the CFO to do that. And there's a form that needs to be, oh, Connie. Substitutes are part-time employees. Part-time employees can be president, but they cannot be treasurer. Okay.
I just had a question to elaborate on that. So we have a bus driver who is a committee chair for yearbook, so she handles financial transactions for the yearbook. Is that allowed?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
One of our chair members, like not a board member, but a chair,
Okay.
is a bus driver for the district. And she handles the money for yearbook because she's over the yearbook. So is she allowed to handle that money, or do we need to figure out a different way to handle those transactions?
Janet? I would say no. Yeah, no,
Okay.
no district employee.
Is a bus driver considered full-time or part-time?
Well, permission.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, one more question. Like for booster club or PTO, like booster club, for example, if we want to spend on something, does the sponsor or the principal has to have to approve that, or do we have independence, like to decide we on what item we want to spend?
For expenses?
Yeah.
That's up to your organization. I mean, no, the principal, no district employee can dictate how you spend your money, other than you got to remember what your purpose is for your group. Your booster club is to support that student group, right? But no, a sponsor or a principal cannot dictate exactly what you have to spend your monies on.
Yeah, or like if they want to spend on something, we don't want. Just in case there are some like different opinions, which guideline should we go? Should we go with the PTO Booster Club guideline, or should we go with our Booster Club policies? Or
These guidelines are here to for you. I mean, some of the stuff in here is board policy and things that you have to abide by. So I would, if you have different like guidelines or something for your booster club, they need to be geared towards this. And so this should be your guidance right here.
Yeah, but for example, if we want to sponsor a trip, if the sponsor think that's not, for example, we want to sponsor like a summer camp or something, like encourage students to go to some camps to like build up, right? We are not like not paying everything, but a small amount to kind of encourage them to be involved in more activities. But the sponsor might not be in favor of that. So
yeah, you need to work with your sponsors on that. You know, I mean, that's something that the parent orgs or the booster clubs and the sponsors should be working together on to come to some type of agreement of what kind of support, you know, should be given. But, you know, if you have something, now you got to remember you should be benefiting the whole group. So, you know, you can't target a small group of students or something like that and allow those students to go to a camp. You know, it needs to be available for all students within the group, or you have to have some type of criteria set up, and there's a whole process for that. But yeah, I would, you know, you need to work on that with the sponsor. But, you know, you got to remember too, you're your own organization. They cannot dictate how you spend your funds. But your purpose is to support that group. So it's in your best interest to work with the sponsors and to help, you know, any kind of way that they need the help, you know, whatever help they need. Okay.
Oh, sorry. For your since you mentioned to benefit the whole group, I just want to ask. For example, if we have 20 students in the club, right? We say, okay, we encourage you to do this. It's your decision, like you want to go to a camp or not.
Yeah, as long as they all have an equal opportunity to do
It's
it,
fine,
then
right?
it should be fine. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
Bevan?
Could I add
Right. And that should be in the permission request, I think, it's a part of that permission request form.
About the money handling, say you have an event and you're selling popcorn. Can a district employee sell the popcorn, make change, put the cash in the cash drawer?
Sorry.
No.
Okay.
We don't want, yeah, try to keep district employees, we don't want district employees handling y'all's cash. Yeah. We got a question over here to the left.
So we're a new drill team booster club, and I want to clarify. Like right now, the director collects the cash payments from the drill team that goes to the booster club, so that they should not be collecting any cash.
Right, that's correct. They should not do that. We make available the campus to all the booster clubs, so you have to have a representative out there to collect the money from the students directly. You set up a day or a time that's convenient for somebody to be out there. But that's why we do allow access to our campuses for your groups or for some,
Okay.
for people to come out and to collect those monies at times. But yeah, you don't want the directors handling your money.
Okay, thank you.
We do have a mic stand here now. If you have questions, you can come to the center too and ask your questions.
So safes, combinations, don't make sure you keep those among your group, and only specific people, a limited number of people should know it. Don't give it to any district employees. And of course, the district, the school, and the district personnel are not responsible for the safe or the contents of that safe. Revenues, money coming in, money you're collecting. You need to receipt all money received or use a cash receipt sheet. And we have an example of that in one of the next slides. It's not for popcorn or certain little things like that, but it's mainly like your dues and your fees and anything like that you might be collecting. You want to receipt those items with either the individual cash receipt sheet, or you can, if it's a bunch of people lined up to, you're collecting from a bunch of people, you can use a cash receipt sheet. It's a little bit more convenient. For fundraisers involving orders, require that money be collected at the time the orders are placed, and then that way you can determine if any of the checks are returned prior to delivering the products. As money for a fundraiser is received, have 2 people count the money before giving it to the treasurer for deposit, and count the money in the presence of the person turning in the money. So it's kind of like that face-to-face verification so that everybody's in agreement that the money matches and it adds up to what it should. This is the cash receipt sheet. That's going to be made available again on Live Binder. It's going to be a template available to you guys. Have checks made payable to the PTO or booster club. Endorse the checks and deposit money as soon as possible to prevent the loss of funds. Do not use cash received to pay expenses. So any kind of collections you're doing, fundraisers, don't hold on to that cash and then go spend it somewhere, okay? You want to deposit the money into the bank account, whatever was collected, and then you want to write your checks for the expenses incurred. This method provides a good audit trail, and there's no question about where the money went or how it was spent. We suggest making a copy of all checks received prior to deposit for backup purposes. If you can, it's best to do so. I mean, sometimes I know you're getting, hundreds of checks if you even accept checks. So you just have to do your best on that one, but it is a recommendation. The use of PayPal, Square, or similar electronic payment collection methods are allowed for your groups. You can use PayPal for collections. Like if you're going to be collecting money from people, yeah, you can use any kind of electronic format to collect money. Expenditures. An expenditure authorization form for prior approval of expenditure is highly recommended, and it's required for all debit card transactions. And I'm going to cover debit cards in a minute. 2 signatures on all checks. So that dual signature, I know that banks tell you you only need one, and they're not looking for the dual signature. It's an internal control for your organization, and somebody should be verifying that there's always two signatures on those checks for those expenditures. And you want to just document all your expenditures. Do not sign blank checks. So debit cards. In the past, we always said you couldn't use debit cards. Well, we want to roll with the times, keep up with the times. I know a lot of people have already been using debit cards, and so we're going to allow debit cards to be used with the following controls in place. That expenditure authorization form, it's highly recommended in most instances, like in all instances, it's recommended, but for this it's required if you're going to use a debit card to make an expenditure. So it must be completed, and 2 authorized approvers' signatures must be obtained on the form prior to any purchase being made or services being ordered. A debit card checkout log should be established by the treasurer so that you can keep up with who has it and why they have it. So you're going to track it going out and coming in, and we'll create a template for you and have that out there for y'all to use. The debit card should be processed as a credit card transaction. So do not utilize the PIN number feature and never give out the PIN number to your members. All right, we need to keep that with your financial records. It'll be all stated out in the guidelines. But yeah, don't use the PIN feature. Always run it as a credit transaction. To support your expenditure with a debit card, you should provide the original itemized receipts and submit that when you're returning the card. And the itemized receipt, think about it, it shows all the items that were purchased. So don't bring back the credit card receipt where you signed your name to it. You need the itemized receipt that shows what was actually purchased. This next one is something that you should already, I'll get to her in a minute. The next one is something that should already be in place. It's the monthly bank statements must be received, opened, and reviewed by an officer without signature authority on the organization's bank account. This person should review checks written to signers, verify that all activity, deposits, and expenditures appear normal, and account balances seem reasonable, taking into consideration any recent activity or fundraising events. So that should be something that's already happening. Make sure that somebody other than a signer on the bank account is reviewing the bank statement. Then once they're done, they turn it over to the treasurer so that they can do their monthly bank statement reconciliation. Thank you. And then finally, with the debit cards, ATM and cash withdrawals using a debit card are prohibited. Yeah, you can't do that. So in the guidelines, in the revised guidelines, there's a whole section regarding how you should handle like getting cash out to make change funds and stuff like that. But you can't use your debit card to go and pull cash out of the ATM or anything like that. Question?
Yeah, so I wanted to go back to the dual check signing. So
Okay.
again, evolving into current times and doing things online and things of that nature, where you can pay bills electronically or pay expenses electronically.
Okay.
What is the thought processes relative to that? Because we do e-checks or we pay directly through the bank accounts.
If you know that the expenditure is going to occur, you just get the pre-approval. You do that expenditure authorization form.
Okay, so not
And
necessarily the dual check thing, but
Yeah, but the expenditure authorization form kind of takes the place of the dual check because you're getting the 2 signatures from 2 signers already.
Okay.
So it kind of replaces that for this process.
Okay.
And you got to do it prior to the expenditure being made.
Okay.
But yeah, with those instances, you should know what the expenditures are
Right.
ahead of time. So
Right.
you should be able to get that authorization form completed.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mike.
So on, like we have a storage unit. And
Okay.
so $137 is drafted every single month on the second day of the month. Do we have to have that form every single month filled out?
For a bank draft, I mean, I would. Yeah, it's an expenditure, but I mean, it's super easy, and if you already know that they're coming, just have them pre-approved already. Just,
Okay.
you know, do it for the 12 months if you're not planning on getting rid of the storage unit. You
So
know,
we could
you
do
don't have to-
one for the whole year.
Well,
Because like over the summer, we're not even meeting and yet it's still being drafted out.
I think
and-
if you note it on there that that's what it's for, I think that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Yeah, because then it's just authorizing the expenditure monthly of over a set period of time. So that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Hi. I was wondering, what about, or I guess we need a better way to do this, cash box, when we pull money out for the cash box?
To make change and stuff?
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. What we're doing right now is not going with any of this. I was wondering if you could give an idea on a way to do it so that it worked within the...
So you're not using debit card, right?
No, we're not doing
Right, and
that.
we don't
I'm
want
just,
to.
if you want to know the truth, because it's what the treasurer's always done, they just go to the bank, do a withdrawal slip, and take cash out, which is not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not what we would recommend. In the guidelines, there'll be a section in there that states how to do it, but it basically entails writing a check to the person who's going to be over the fundraiser, whoever the fundraiser committee chair, whoever is going to be over it in your organization.
Right.
You write a check to them, they go and cash that check at the bank to receive the money to make change from, and then when the fundraiser's over, they resubmit that cash, and that deposit should be made separately from the deposit of the collections from the thing.
And I understand
event.
that the reason we started doing it this way was because the bank charges an $8 fee if you don't have an account with that bank to cash a check. So we were trying to get around the $8 fee, and that's why we stopped doing it that way.
Well, I don't have an answer for that one other than they go to your bank. Maybe I don't know what bank you're using. If there's not a whole bunch of them around or something, where
It's Chase. Chase
Well,
charges
there
an
should be
$8
Chases
fee.
everywhere, and wouldn't they be able to go to any?
Well,
Chase
it's if
bank,
you
or-
don't, if the person cashing the check does not have an account at that bank.
Oh, if they don't have.
Yes.
But can't you just make a check to them and they can go to their own bank?
Oh, really? That's what they'd have to do, yeah.
Then they
Okay.
would, go to their bank. That's a good question.
So we have like a cash box in our safe with just a certain amount, 150, and just change in a bag, like for concessions. So is that okay? I mean,
If it's for the concessions and it's only for concessions, it's a rolling, but I think that's okay. It's like if you're having different events, you don't want to intermingle it.
Correct, no.
So don't intermingle it with another fundraising event.
Correct,
Keep
okay.
it strictly for that. But y'all should be reconciling that and keeping up with that and making sure
correct.
that it's always
like
replenished.
we'll go the next day and petty cash, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And it shouldn't be a whole lot in there. Okay.
And as far as having verification for counting the money and turning it into the treasurer, is it okay to have a district employee to be there to verify or no?
I would recommend that it be another member, not a district employee.
I have a question real fast. Hi.
Where are we?
Over here.
Okay.
Hi.
Okay.
I want to go back to the cash receipt, like if we're taking in cash. And you
Okay.
said if you're doing popcorn or whatever, it's not necessary.
Yeah, when you're doing the popcorn sales and things like that, and the students are selling popcorn, you're not going to receipt each bag of popcorn or anything like that. Same thing with concessions. You're not going to
like a
receipt
spirit
everything
shop?
in concessions. Now, spirit shop, if you're
Like we do a
selling-
spirit shop for the kids at the elementary school. So they're paying like dollar items.
Yeah, it's small stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What have we recommended in the
Got
past?
like 25-cent items. Yeah. No. Nope. We've got kids coming with a Ziploc baggie of money, and we've got all kinds of stuff for them to buy. So What we did last year is we had a little receipt that we just said, you bought this many items at this much money.
That's
Like, that
fine.
was our receipt, but we didn't keep a copy of it for ourselves.
Mhm.
So we need a copy of it for ourselves, right? We have an inventory sheet that we keep count on. Yeah, we have a start count, a cash count for the cash box, and then at the end, we do an end count and an end inventory. Mm-hmm. I'm going to quote you on that.
She didn't hold the mic. We can't hear her. Janet, if you can get the mic when you answer questions.
So I have a question on that. So is there like a recommended minimum, say if they buy a $20 t-shirt, then you would notate it, but otherwise not, in order to make this simpler for our volunteers? And then after every spirit shop, like we do one once a month, would we have to do a fundraising activity report once a month for that?
If it's a spirit, like a spirit shop or something like that, I would say you could probably get away with doing one once a semester, you know, and you wouldn't have to do it every month. As far as, what was the other question?
I'm just wondering, like, because we do sell, I mean, the kids buy 25 cents, it's
Oh,
50 cents.
yeah.
Is there a minimum that you would recommend that we issue a notated amount receipt for or whatever?
I say you just look at it. If it's going to be a low dollar, high volume type item, you either do the cash receipt sheet or you just don't do it if you feel like that's the appropriate way to do it. But
Okay.
if you're selling T-shirts, spirit apparel, or something, like that, you should be issuing a receipt to each parent. And think about it. Think about the situation and what you're selling. Is a parent going to want a receipt? And could they come back and there be a question whether they paid, So really we're talking about shirts, dues, uniform, any kind of supply fees, stuff like that, But like little things like pencils and things at the store, the school store and stuff, maybe not so much.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
That's okay.
a different subject. That you covered earlier regarding expenditures and dual signatures on checks. Within our bylaws, we have a threshold. Is that something that should we have all of our checks?
I think you should have all your any checks that are issued should have dual signatures so that you can ensure your group is ensuring that the expenditure is appropriate and it's not mismanaged by one person.
Okay.
So.
For the person that is that needs to review the monthly bank statements that are not the signers, can they be a district employee?
They should not be a district. No.
Okay.
You have a lot of district employees in your group, or? Oh, so low support right now. You're limited, yeah. Try to ramp up and get some people in your group, But yeah, district employees, we want to keep that separation. There just has to be that separation between district and the 501c3 organization. We got a question?
On the monthly review, where people look over your bank statement, we don't get copies of checks back at all. So
Yeah,
like
that
for
person-
our annual audit, I was treasurer last year. Every time a check would clear the bank, I would have to go online, print a copy, and add it to our files. So it is checked at the end of the year. But monthly, there's nothing in the bank statement for them to review. for
Yeah, they usually
signatures.
don't provide, well, some banks do provide copies of the checks, some don't with the statement that they send. I think what they can do is they can just view the expenditure. If they're looking for the dual signature, then a lot of times you can go online and check those checks, pull them up and check them. So maybe that person has access to view that, But somewhere along at some point, someone needs to review all the checks and make sure that there's dual signatures on all of them. Just set up whatever process works best. So this is an example of the expenditure authorization form, and this will be a template in the live binder for you guys. Authorized signers, at least 3 signers on your bank account. I think in the past we used to say 2, but really there ought to be 3. You need to have that backup signer in there to make it work. So we recommend the president, treasurer, and secretary, but you can set it up, however. District employees cannot be a signer, and district employees cannot be the treasurer. The fundraising activity report, you have the permission request, you must be using a district-approved fundraising vendor, and so does everybody know where to find those approved fundraising vendors? If you go to CFISD.net and you go to community involvement, and it's under fundraising, and if you click on, there will be a thing that says fundraisers or fundraising. Click on that, and it'll take you there, and then you can click on the link that takes you to the approved fundraising vendors. You need to, submit your request to the principal for approval, and we recommend at least 30 days prior to the fundraiser being held. The operating report, complete the form and applicable attachments within 1 week of the fundraiser, submit it to the treasurer for verification, provide to the president for review, and then submit a copy to the principal or designee. Conflict of interest, just real quick, and this is in the guidelines. Officers and members must avoid any conflict between their personal interests and the interests of the PTO Booster Club and campus. Officers and members must avoid actual conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest. Officers and members must perform day-to-day duties with integrity and in an ethical manner. So basically that means if you have a business or your spouse has a business like a t-shirt company or something, you cannot do business with your parent org or the campus that you're affiliated with. You can become a contracted vendor, or they can become a contracted vendor with the district and do business with all the other campuses, just not your parent organization and not your campus, because you can see where the conflict would be there.
And you have like items with the school logo. So if a parent were to own a company where they did promotional type products, they could not provide the items for that.
That is correct,
okay.
because they're going to profit from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Up front. Oh.
Can you remind us the technical definition of fundraisers? What
Fundraisers.
Qualifies as a fundraiser? It used to be there were major fundraisers and they were allowed 2 a year.
Yeah, they still have that.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, back to what our parents can make us for our school stores. So any parent, let's say the parent doesn't own their own company, and it's a mom who has the Cricut machine at her house,
Mm-hmm.
and is going to put a K on some bags that we've ordered, and we're going to sell that. Is that allowed?
Are you paying her? Are you just paying for the items for her, or is she like
so here,
donating her service?
Two-part question. Sometimes, so if she's donating her service, and let's say we are paying for the material, the vinyl that's going to go on there.
That would be fine. There's no business relationship there.
Okay, but if we pay her to do it, we can't do.
There's a business relationship, and that's a conflict. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't get into that. I would just avoid that. If it's,
That's where we're a little confused, 'cause they're not making any, they're not making any money. We're buying the material, they're doing it.
Right, but if we pay her for her time.
But my question is, so what if she says, I say, here are these bags we bought, you do the vinyl, and she gives me a receipt for the cost of the vinyl. So I have to then write her a check for the $20.
you reimbursed her. It's more of a reimbursement.
Is that a reimbursement?
That's a reimbursement. It's not a
Okay.
business relationship.
Okay.
Can I ask real quick though? God, that sounds loud. What is the? I guess what's the risk? I guess that's what we're not quite understanding.
Well, it's the perception. Think of public perception, right? You know, we're talking about money and making profit. That's one thing. You know, if a parent or something is going to make a profit and they're going to benefit, but you got to think their child is in this organization, and so there's a conflict there, because what if their child is given preferential treatment because the parent is offering something extra, you know, to the organization,
But the parent's getting
or
paid
to
for
the
their
campus.
time.
But there's other companies out there, and so there's a
So if you
conflict.
got 3 bidders and they were the low bid, then you could do it. I guess I'm not understanding. Like maybe I'm thinking elementary school, and I'm not thinking with like a high school booster club head on. But there's really nothing we can give that child.
But yes, you can. Basically, it's so you can't give that parent extra money.
No, because I'm the treasurer and all my books are audited. How would I give them? I mean, then that's on me.
You
And that's
see it
where,
more. You see it more clear with the booster clubs, because the booster clubs can
Right.
give preferential treatment, but we apply it to all parent organizations. There's the conflict, it's the ethical issue, it's a public perception. That parent could be receiving, you know, some type of, you know, advertising for providing that work and everything, you know, and it's going to increase their business, their sales, because they're doing that. But they're a member. But you're saying, okay, well, we'll allow you to do that because you're a member of our organization.
But for PTO, especially
Yeah.
we're not thinking that way. We're thinking this person's going to do it for the cheapest amount of money, and we don't want to waste our parent money.
They're invested.
if they are, is that okay then?
Yes, ours are. The one we used last year isn't a approved vendor for CFISD. But then also, like the signs, the woman that does signs, her child goes to our school and she puts signs out, like welcome to school and all that kind of stuff. And so we essentially can't use her for her signs anymore. She does them for our whole entire area.
And there's no other vendors that do that?
Okay.
It's just called single. And for a PTO, I think elementary school, our mindset is we're trying to do what's going to save the most amount of money to be able to provide the service.
And they're usually giving us benefit.
And everything that we use
Yeah.
outside of that is going to cost us a lot more, which is kind of wasting our parents' donations.
My best friend, the PTO president,
Right.
my best friend's the Booster Club president, and I have these types of businesses when I make these wooden signs for the yard, if I make, you know, candle business or whatever. And they of course are gonna say, yeah, let's do it so you can make some money. And that happens all the time. And it's really a conflict of interest for that parent. And the Booster Club PTO to allow that to happen is your friends, using your friends to help them benefit from to sell. There's so many fundraising vendors out there. I mean,
Yeah, they cost a lot of money.
well, then that person can donate, you know, like you said, the stitching,
Donate it, yeah.
the materials, and everything else.
So I have a question about the conflict of interest for maybe Spirit Nights for the Good Neighbor program for our PTO. My president's husband works for a specific restaurant that is on our Spirit Night listing. He does not work for the specific location, but he did get us approved for that location to do a once a month Spirit Night. to, of course, get donations for our Good Neighbor program. Would that be a conflict of interest?
I think if it's
It's
a different if he
donations.
works at a different location,
He's
and
at a
it's
different
donations,
location.
I think it's fine.
Okay, thank you very much.
And by the way, that is a good question as far as, we have different Dairy Queens, different Baskin Robbins, different restaurants, since a lot of them are individually, have different Chick-fil-A's, that each of them have to, become an approving, it's not just necessarily the not the same. If they own three, they put all three on there, then we can
And they use a bid process where they get 3 documented bids and select the lowest and keep all of that. Would that work?
It's better than nothing.
If they're donating something? Sorry. So we have a parent within our school, elementary school PTO. She has her own company. If she's willing to donate something, that's fine. But if we're paying her for it, that's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would be okay with that as long as there's a documented process. But then we have to think about, we just really have to think about the preferential treatment of the student by a parent offering something to their organization.
If you don't mind, I'm going to add to that. It's maybe taking it a little bit too far, but if you have a parent that's donating a product, but they're self-promoting, for instance, if they've made something and they ask us, another parent, well, where did you get that? Who made that? Well, it's so-and-so. Even though they donated something, they're promoting themselves. Is that okay?
Think about that.
It's a fine line.
If they gave something to the school, there's nothing you can do about it. If somebody says, hey, where'd you get that? Then, we're not gonna go there. Yeah.
One more question up front, and then we're going to move forward.
I've been in a lot of volunteer organizations. The whole idea of all of this is avoiding every appearance of evil or impropriety. If it looks bad, if it smells bad, if it could in some way, shape, or form reflect poorly on your organization, don't do it. If someone donates something, who cares? But if there's any way, shape, or form someone outside your organization can look at that and say, oh, she did that because she's getting a favor with such and such or so-and-so. The 2 signs on the check, the same reason. If someone doesn't sign that check besides me, well, what's Steve doing with that money? Somebody else is signing to verify that was a valid expense. The district can't watch every little transaction we do, but at some point your organization may be audited. And if your organization has anything that looks bad, smells bad, tastes bad, the organization can be disbanded, and you no longer have a band booster club, an athletic booster club, a PTO. So that's what the whole idea is. Just one person shouldn't be doing anything. Everybody get together in the organization, make sure it's an approved expenditure. If someone wants to donate something and you think that may not look good, appreciate it, but no, we can't take your donation. So I'm sorry that's not a question, but
That's a great point.
Very, very good. Very well said. We did this
All right. The next few slides are over IRS stuff, but this is going to be covered by Merle, so I'm going to skip over that and move on to the sales tax real quick. So just Michael, when he gets here, the comptroller's office, he's going to cover a lot of this stuff, but just briefly we can talk about, the sales tax permit. He can tell you how to apply for it and everything. It allows your organization to sell taxable items in Texas. There's the website to apply for it. You must submit a Texas sales tax report whether taxes due or not. Tax exemption, when you get tax exemption status, it allows approved organizations an exemption from sales tax when you're making purchases. And it allows 2 one-day tax-free sales days per calendar year, with one day being 24 consecutive hours. So for that, what that means is you could start a sale at 1 p.m. and you can end it on the next day at 1 p.m. and that's 24 hours. Non-qualifying fundraisers. These are your catalog sales. You're acting as an agent on behalf of a for-profit company. They are responsible for remitting the sales tax to the state. You cannot use a one-day tax-free day for those sales and try to get that extra tax dollars for your profit or anything like that. It's not allowed. So sales tax, it says here, sales tax must be collected but it should already be built into the pricing that the vendor's giving you or whatever. And we typically like to see it stated on their brochures or whatever, their pamphlets, order forms or whatever, that sales tax is being collected. But I don't think I'm pretty sure a lot of them aren't doing that. So your non-qualifying fundraiser examples: catalog sales, book fairs, candle sales, and the holiday shop stuff, where people come in and bring give you the inventory to sell on their behalf. To check your status, look up the status of your organization and determine if you have a sales tax permit, sales and use tax exemption, and franchise exemption. You look it up by your name, EIN, or taxpayer number. There's the website. And last slide. So these are your contact people. So you have Bevan Gordon. She's over the PTOs. She oversees volunteers at the campuses. Christy Giron is over the booster clubs. And then, again, Janet's the one that, in my office, who will answer questions, financial questions, if you have any and want to contact her. So that's all I have. Let's take a 15-minute break, and we'll transition speakers. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Banquet at the end of the year.
Okay.
So prior, they kind of ran that through the school.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about running it through like a separate thing in the booster club.
Okay.
Is that okay? Because it's really the kid money. We're just going to set it aside as part of this. It says this is drama club money. Because what they found is that
Testing. All right, you all ready to get started? Sure you all have something else better to do? I'm going to talk to you today about what the IRS requires you to do as a 501c3. I'm sure all of this was explained to you when you volunteered for this job. No? No, it wasn't explained? Can't imagine. No, you don't get paid. All right. You are a 501c3, which means you have to do certain things to satisfy your IRS requirements. One of them is to file a tax return every year. If you fail to file a tax return for 3 years in a row, you are revoked and you become a taxable corporation. You owe income taxes. I've had this happen a few times. In fact, this past year it's happened more often than not, more frequently than usual. I've had at least 4 organizations come to me that have been revoked because officers didn't file tax returns for 3 years. In one case, the money disappeared and the records disappeared. So, you know, it's not hard, which is why we do this, so that you don't feel overwhelmed as to, you know, oh, I've got to file a tax return. We're going to try to explain it to you in the simplest terms so that you can do it, and in most cases, you can do it yourself. The biggest thing you have to be concerned with is, what are your gross receipts? That's gross. How much did you collect? Not net, okay? So if you collected $50,000 or less for your fiscal year, then you have to report on 990N, which is not a paper file, it's an online file only. And you sign in and you give them some basic information. That's it. If it takes you more than 10 minutes, you're computer illiterate. If your gross receipts are more than $50,000 and less than $200,000, which in most cases it's probably the majority of you, then you have to file the 990EZ. If your gross receipts are more than $200,000, then you have to file the 990 form, which is just a longer form and more questions. The 990 guys are generally going to be your band and athletic booster club, you know, who collect a lot of money. Like if you do by chance get revoked, you have basically 15 months to reapply for your exemption. You have to file all your tax returns. You will get penalty letters. If you're a 990EZ filer or less, the penalties are $20 a day up to $5,000 or 5% of your gross receipts, whichever is higher. Okay? If you're a 990 filer, it's $100 a day up to $10,000. So it can get expensive, and it's a real waste of money to write the IRS a check for 3 years worth of tax returns, and you have to write them a check for $15,000 because you didn't file. I mean, that's a lot of hard work somebody went into to collect that money that you now can't use for your students. You can get out of them. I have gotten a lot of people out of these late filing penalties if it's your first time. IRS is usually pretty forgiving. If it's a pattern with your organization, they do it, we get them out of it, a couple years later they do it again, IRS says, no, write us a check. So just be aware. And if you're not sure what your status is, okay, if you don't have copies of tax returns in your files that the previous officers gave you. You can call the IRS, you can get online and do a charity search and make sure your status is still active. All right. Just like any business, I strongly advise that anybody you pay, any vendor you pay, you get a W-9 from. A W-9 form says, give me your name, your ID number, and what kind of entity you are. I don't care about Walmart or Sam's Club or somebody like that. The main reason you need this is because, just like any business, if you pay certain people more than $600, you have to give them a 1099 in January for the previous calendar year. And this, generally 1099s are given to individuals, general partnerships, LLCs, not really, but a lot of people do it, and attorneys. And an attorney, if you pay him anything, you have to give him a 1099. I guess the IRS doesn't trust attorneys. We do. The other thing you have to do is you have to give a donation receipt to people who give you money or property. Just like when you make a donation to your church, at the end of the year they send you a receipt and saying, here's all the money you've donated to us. We're a 501c3, it's tax deductible. You have the same responsibility if somebody gives you more than $250 cumulatively for the year. So if they write you a check for $125 and $125 and it's a donation, okay, and it's not for something they get in return, then you have to give them a donation receipt. Okay? Good question. Question, is there a difference between a donation and a sponsorship? Somewhat. I mean, obviously they're getting name recognition for sponsoring your event. They're really not getting anything in return other than, sponsored by. I almost consider those donations, really. It's generally for businesses, and it's, you can give them a donation receipt. They're going to write it off as marketing or advertising or something along those lines. But, either way, I think you're okay on those. Donations for fundraisers, okay? If somebody gives you property, set of golf clubs for one of your auctions, you need to give them a receipt if it's worth more than $250. I advise you don't put a value on it because you really don't know what the value is. Just thank you for the donation of blah, blah, okay? The value that they're going to deduct is going to be up to them. Okay, you don't need to, obviously if it has a face value like tickets, and there's a face value on there, that's fine. But other than that, I wouldn't put a value on it. The other type is what's known as the quid pro quo donation receipt. The best example I have of this is your golf tournaments. You charge $150, play golf in your tournament. A round of golf and the box lunch at this club you're playing at is worth $60. They have a donation of $90. $150 less the value they received. Okay, that's called quid pro quo. And where are we at here? Another possible form you may have to file if somebody donates property to you that's worth more than $500 and you dispose of it, which in most cases you will, you have to file Form 8282 to tell the IRS who you got it from, what was donated, and how much you got for it. The reasoning for this is obviously somebody donates a TV that they say is worth $1,000 and you sell it at an auction for $200. Well, you know, in theory, the IRS is going to try to match that. I don't think they do, but that's the theory behind the form. Individual accounts. This was brought up in your conflicts of interest, you know, where Johnny's mom does some work for the organization and she gets a discount for Johnny's next field trip. Okay? Can't do it. IRS says you can't do it. It was an argument for many years with them, and they finally came out and said, nope, it's, if you do, it's considered compensation to the individual. Their whole premise is you're there to support all the entire group that you deal with, whatever it is, the band, the football team, the, you know, 5th grade class. And you can't give preferential treatment to one individual over another. They just say you can't do it, otherwise somebody's going to end up with potentially compensation. These are some terms that you'll see that I'll kind of, sure. Sure. Yeah. It's the organization who can't show preference. These are some things you'll run across when you do tax returns or, you know, deal with the IRS, is a disqualified person. Okay? A disqualified person is basically any officer or director of the organization or anybody who donates $5,000 or more to the organization. The reason you need to know that is because when we do the public support test for an organization, monies that come from disqualified persons is excluded from the numerator. So that's the reason for, you know, you have to kind of know what that term means. Donor advised funds. There's a question on the 990EZ, do you have any donor advised funds? If you answer yes, you can't file the 990EZ, you have to go file the 990 form regardless of what your receipts are. So, and a donor advised fund is, here's $5,000, but you can only spend it on this. In other words, they tell you what you can use the money for. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean you're going out and raise money for playground equipment and saying, we're raising money for playground equipment. And the guy says, here's some money. That's not a donor advised fund. You've set up the criteria for what it is, what it's to be used for. The other thing you'll see is unrelated business income. Just because you're tax exempt doesn't mean you can't potentially owe income taxes. The biggest possibility that could cause your organization to pay income taxes is you run advertising. Advertising is basically somebody in one of your publications running an ad that says Joe's Garage oil changes, you know, something like that.
Can you let us know what the difference between advertising and sponsorship is?
Sponsorship just says sponsored by. It's just the name recognition. Okay? Advertising is the advertising of services or products. In other words, Joe's Garage, you know, gives you $1,000 for your golf tournament. They sponsor hole number 3. You say sponsored by Joe's Garage. That's not advertising. You have a football program that Joe's puts an ad in there. It says Joe's Garage oil changes $59.95, you know, whatever. Thank you. That's advertising because he's advertising a product or a service.
We're about to do the 18-wheelers, the trailers, and sell sticker space on the 18-wheelers for the boosters clubs. all the band equipment's going on this trailer. We're going to sell sponsorships, but it's going to be Joe's Garage, great mechanic, call him.
That's advertising. So you could owe income taxes on that. And if you do, you have to file a 990T, okay, in addition to the 990EZ or 990. The rest of the time, all the other stuff you sell, t-shirts, candles, etc., none of that is considered unrelated business income, even though potentially you're selling products, because none of you get paid. And you don't do it often enough. That's the main criteria. But advertising is unique. Doesn't matter that you don't get paid, doesn't matter you do it once. If it's advertising, it's unrelated business income. Yep. Say it again.
Can you elaborate on number 2 there, the travel tours? So in our case, we're trying to organize a trip for the band. Does that fall into that category?
No, that is not a travel tour. That is, you're taking the band to a competition, to a school.
Six Flags?
Not really.
Highly educational.
Yeah, highly. It's bonding.
So that's the context for the question.
Yeah, I don't
at
think
least.
that, they're not interested in whether the band goes to a Six Flags for a day off. They're interested in somebody putting together trips to Hawaii or the Bahamas or someplace like that as a means of raising money. Yeah.
I had a question about the no ads. So if you had a program that you were giving out and you couldn't have ads in it, but what if parents had bought Senior Spotlight or Good Luck to My Child Next Year? Like,
that's not advertising.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not a product or a service. Yeah.
Then just real quick for the Booster Club sponsorship on those trucks. Just remember that all fixed, there's no approval for fixed signage on district property. So you have to be careful selling advertising or even selling sponsorships on places that doesn't belong to the PTO or Booster Club. So if you have questions about fixed signage on district property, please run it by us to get our approval on that stuff. Right, there is no approval for any fixed signage on district property, but if you have questions about a type of advertising and you're concerned that it might be something like that, you can run those questions through us. Thank you.
The IRS also has, questions regarding conflicts of interest. Obviously, their concern is organizations self-dealing. Their main issue is as long as it's arm's length, okay? In other words, you're getting a product at a fair value or less than fair value, they don't have an issue. Vehicle donations, as far as like scholarships, some of you give scholarships. As long as the process is fair and you're not voting for your kid to get the scholarship, then you're probably okay. Vehicle donations, you can take them. Just be aware there's a lot of paperwork involved as far as filing, showing who you got the car from, how long you kept it, how much you sold it for, et cetera, and there's like 3 different forms you got to file. Okay, the fun part. We're going to go over the 990EZ because that's what I think the majority of you file. The biggest issue here is keep good records. Okay? I strongly recommend getting QuickBooks, Quicken, or some other electronic system to allow you to put your receipts and disbursements in and to pass on to the next group. Every year it seems I get calls about, we didn't get the records from last year. Treasurer's gone, nobody knows where she is, records disappeared. And it's like, why do you want these? Okay? I mean, put them in a box, take them to the new treasurer's house, put them on the porch, ring the doorbell, and go. I mean, God, get rid of this stuff. You don't want it. But it happens every year. The records disappear. I guess, I don't know, maybe they're gold and I didn't know it. All right. You have basically, this is what you need to keep up with as far as accounting for your receipts and disbursements. You have 4 types of income. You have a donation. I like what you do. Here's some money. Program revenue. We're going to go on a field trip. I need $100 from every kid. Fundraising revenue. We're going to go sell, we have a carnival. We're going to sell candles, whatever. Those are fundraisers and maybe some interest. And that's about it. Those are your 4 sources. Memberships, by the way, are considered, in your case, donations because you get nothing for it other than maybe a bumper sticker and a T-shirt, and you get put to work. Okay? And you got to buy the T-shirt too. So see, it's a donation. On your fundraisers, you have to keep up with each different type of fundraiser. And the reason for that is you potentially have to report them all separately. So your golf tournaments, your carnivals, your candles, your T-shirts, your spirit items, etc. They're basically fundraisers. Keep up with all the money you collect for each one of them and all the expenses that you're incurred for each one of them. If somebody gives you property, okay, good example is Texans tickets. It's a donation of property, okay, and then when you auction it off, it goes away. It's receipt of income, and it's an expense for your auction. Unless, of course, you use it. It's a donation. Yeah. And you need to book it as at its value as best you can determine. Okay? It's income. Yeah. And then you're going to auction it off, and it's going to be an expense to the auction. Okay? In theory. If they give you a bunch of gift baskets and so forth, that's tough. But in theory, yes. If somebody donates property to you that you're going to use in your auctions, which a lot of you do, then it's a donation to you, and it's basically an expense of the auction at the value as best you can determine. Bingo. Okay. Okay.
And we'll have all this stuff donated, and then you win the bingo, you get...
Same thing.
Okay.
You have a donation, and then you have a bingo prize. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's the expense.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yes. No.
How does that work?
I donate a TV to you that's worth $500, okay? So you have an income. And you also, if in theory, You have an asset of $500 until you then go auction it off and somebody pays you $400 for it. You got to give them the TV, so the TV's gone. And you collect $400. Okay? Five. And then you have, you have, no, yeah, well, yeah, but sometimes you get a $300 TV and everybody bids it up to $600, you know.
Okay.
All right. 990EZ, if you'll notice I'm using the 18 form, even though your year end is June 19. So you're going to use the prior year form, name, ID number, your year end, which is in most of these cases it's July 1 to June 30. If you're a corporation, you're a 501c3. Your gross receipts, okay? That's the gross you collected for the year. Donations. Program revenue is, again, you went on a field trip, you collected some money from each kid. That's program revenue, okay? The bands, you charge the kids a few $100s to go on a competition. That's program revenue. It's not a fundraiser. What page is this? Oh, B. All right, this is how you report your fundraisers. If you have more than $15,000 in fundraising revenue, okay, and that's from all of them, then you report each one. The first two is, they want the two biggest in columns, the first two columns, and then the rest are combined in, the third column. And so basically you tell them, all right, we collected $18,000, and this is the golf tournament. This is the quid pro quo that I was explaining. Of that, $12,000 was considered a donation under the quid pro quo rules. So that gets reported on line 1 of the tax return as a donation. And then you report the expenses that you have for each fundraiser. Did you have prizes? Yeah, we had, somebody won some tickets or something. The facility, the golf course, how much food? Well, usually the golf course includes it. Did you have entertainment? If you did, fine, and split out the expense. And the same with each fundraiser. They basically want to know is, how much are you collecting and how much is it costing you to collect it? That you're actually making a profit. And you're basically not throwing a mega gala making $1 million and it costing you, $980,000 and you make a $20,000 profit so that your rich friends can have a party. That's not a fundraiser. That's kind of what they're looking for in these forms, is basically that the organization is actually benefiting from the fundraiser. And then once you report all this, now, if you have t-shirt sales or spirit item sales, it can go both ways. Is it a fundraiser or is it the sale of inventory, which is line 7 on page 1 of the return? I report it both ways. I guess, I don't know, depending on the mood I'm in that day. Either way, the IRS, I don't think, is that concerned with it, but probably the more accurate way to report it is inventory sales, your t-shirts, your spirit items, to be reported on line 7. Again, it's not unrelated business income because you're all volunteers. None of you are getting paid. So once you fill out that form, then it goes back to page 1. And that's line 6A and B. And then the donations that come from there is line 6B, I'm sorry. And then that's your profit for the fundraisers. Now, if you'll notice, the 58,000, which is the gross revenue, is the donations, the program revenue, the interest, and the gross revenue from your fundraisers. No netting. And that's also how you determine which form you file, is the gross revenue. Your expenses are primarily grants and scholarships. If you write the school a check for playground equipment, here's $10,000, that's a grant to the school. You give scholarships to, band members. You give out $10,000 to 10 different kids, those are scholarships. That goes reported on line 10. And you kind of explain it in the back of the return as to who you're giving the money to. The rest of the form is basically, professional fees if you have somebody, if you pay an attorney or an accountant, and then basically the rest is other expenses which are listed on Schedule O, which we'll go back to. Page 2 is basically, in most of all yours case, it's cash in the beginning and cash in the end. So you take your cash in the beginning, your profit and loss for the year should equal your cash at the end of the year. Most of you don't have any other assets or liabilities because you probably should be reporting on a cash basis to this. You can report on accrual. If when you set up you elect accrual. I advise not accrual but cash. And then you explain to them what's your purpose. Well, we're educational. We, support the 5th grade class, et cetera, et cetera. What'd you give out in scholarships? What'd you give, your total expenses, which generally I just report total expenses from line 17 on line 28. Some of it may be administrative, your bank fees or, some storage charges or something. Don't care. Then you list your officers, how many hours a week they work. That's low, I know, it's low. How much they got paid, that's right. They don't want to know what your out-of-pocket was. Okay? Next page is just a bunch of questions. They want to know who's got the books, who's the treasurer, name, address. You can use the school address, most of you do, and a telephone number. They want a contact just in case they want to get a hold of you. Haven't heard of it happening, but they ask for it. Question 44A is the question in reference to donor-advised funds. Do you have any? If you answer that question yes, you can't file the EZ, you have to file the 990 form. Okay? Next page is all basically NA. Who's going to sign the return? This is your public support test. In order to be a 501c3, you must pass a public support test. If you fail this form, if you fail to pass the test, you're very bad at math. Most of you are going to be a line 10, an organization that gets a third of its support from contributions and then from gross receipts from, whatever you raise your money from. And when you got your IRS determination letter, it said you're a 509A1 or a 509A2. 509A2 is box 10. 509A1 is box 7. Okay? So generally when you made your application, the IRS said you're 501A2. Okay? Now, older letters said you're either or. You could pick. Generally I just put everybody as a number 10. which is this page must be completed in the math at the bottom showing on line 15 that you passed the public support test. Basically, if you don't attach this form, you'll have an incomplete return, you'll get a nasty letter from the IRS and potential penalty letter because you didn't file a complete return. Schedule A must be attached. Now, a lot of groups try to go in and say they're a 509A3, a support organization. Unless the IRS says you're a 509A3 in your letter, you're not. Okay? Because 509A3 doesn't have to attach Schedule A, which I think is why they do that. But it's not right. Okay? And generally all this does is saying, okay, how'd you get your money, your gross receipts? Now we're going to subtract from that your disqualified donations. You know, people who donated more than 2% of your line 6. Technically any money from the officers and directors, I wouldn't get too hung up on that, you know, of trying to deduct the president's membership dues. And basically they're going to come up with a numerator, which then gets divided by the denominator. And that gives you the percentage. And again, that percentage has to be more than 33 1/3. If it's below that, you're bad at math, because none of you should ever fail this. Okay, the other form you may have to file is Schedule B. If anybody donates money or property during the year, your fiscal year, that totals $5,000 or more, you must attach Schedule B. And basically they want to know their name and address and how much they gave you. It's a disclosure, yes.
Would that include non-cash donations?
Yes. It includes property. So if somebody donates a car and it's worth more than $5,000, it has to be listed on Schedule B. I hope you have the problem. We don't see too many. And then after that is Schedule G again, and then Schedule O, which is basically, you know, this is where you're going to list your grants and your scholarships and then your other expenses. Okay? Oop, you don't care about that. And basically on the scholarships, all they want to know is how many kids got the scholarships. They don't ask for names and addresses anymore. They used to. If you give it to the school, they want to know the name and address of the school. Okay? Which is fine. And it can be either cash or property. You went out and you bought playground equipment and you gave it to the elementary school. That's fine. It's still a grant. That's basically it, okay? If you have questions and you get stuck on this, you can email me or call me and I'll try to help you, okay? No, I don't charge for phone calls or emails. I charge for paper. If I have to fill out paper, then I charge. So the idea is we want you all to make sure you file your returns, because it's not fair to the people who are going to come behind you that you don't file it and they've got to go figure out what you did. And you don't file for 3 years and then they've got a mess on their hands that they get revoked And they've got to dig up the records and come up with a bunch of numbers to file tax returns, get out of late filing penalties, and file for an application again. That's why we put these on every year, because we know it's somewhat daunting to look at this and go, I got to do what? Okay? So I'm here as a resource to help you if you have questions, you get stuck on something on doing these tax returns. They're not exceedingly difficult. I know they're not like doing your 1040 where here's my wages. There's a little more detail to it, but it's not impossible. If you keep good records, and that's the key, if you keep good records, it shouldn't be too difficult. Okay? Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Merle. We'll take a brief 15 minutes, transition speakers to the comptroller's office. If you have any questions, you can catch Merle on his way out. Thanks.
It's not for Merle. It's for... Okay, I'm sorry. I have a question real quick. I received an email with a link to file my 990 online. Oh, yes, and it was for the wrong school, and so I keep trying to get to ours. I can't find the link. So could someone just help me follow or find my link so I can report it for my school?
Report what? I'm sorry. Say it again.
Sorry, Merle. This isn't really for you necessarily. We received a link, an email with a link to file our 990 online.
Okay.
But we're Cy Woods, and it was for Jersey Village. So when I followed the link, it only gives me access to Jersey Village. It doesn't give me access to Cy Woods. So I'm just trying to figure out how I can get...
Who sent you the link?
Be suspicious of IRS emails, okay?
Okay.
They don't email.
No email, okay.
Unless you're dealing directly with an agent on an audit.
File990info.org?
No,
that's somebody else?
That's a paid group.
Holy moly. Okay, thank you.
IRS does not...
Well, I thought it was from the district. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're close. And if that's the case,